Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the second webinar in this ProPack West Africa series. I trust you're all well and keeping safe. As many of you listening will know, today is particularly relevant for the ProPack West Africa community, as right now we'll be opening our doors to the landmark exhibition centre in Lagos for day 2 of the 2020 exhibition. Of course, with all the recent events affecting us globally, it hasn't been possible this year, and as organisers, we are all having to shift our thinking to new and adaptable ways in which to serve our community and provide platforms for all of you to network and communicate. I have to say, it's great to see so many of you tuning in to this second webinar. It's clear to see why, given the impressive speaker lineup we have for you this morning, and of course, which is such a huge topic right now, what is the impact of the new normal on our packaging industry? Just before I hand you over, there are a few points of housekeeping I wanted to run through to all of your listeners. The first thing, we had some feedback from the last webinar. For some of you that are tuning in, which has slightly slower internet speeds, you may want to switch your video from HD to 360 DPI, which you can do in the bottom menu, just below where the speaker window is. Secondly, I'd like to remind you all there's a live Q&A happening at the end of the session. So for any of you that would like to ask a question, you can do right now and during the live discussion by going to the Ask a Question button, also in the menu below. Whilst there might not be time to answer all of the questions, the panel will do their best to get as many covered at the end of the broadcast. So without further ado, I'm delighted to introduce you to Suzanne Okoh, Manager for Sustainability and Climate Change at PwC Nigeria. Suzanne will set the scene for the discussion and introduce you to the speaker panel before diving straight into moderating the session. So Suzanne, over to you.
Thanks, George. And good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to today's webinar session. In a moment, we'll be discussing the impact of the new normal on the packaging industry. I'm sure this is a topic we're all eager to learn from, because this really reflects the world we live in today, particularly as we grapple with the effects of COVID-19 on the way we live our lives and conduct our livelihoods in Nigeria, West Africa, and of course, the world at large. My name is Suzanne Okoh, and I'm a manager with PricewaterhouseCoopers. I work in the sustainability and climate change practice. I'd like to take a quick moment to recognize ProPack West Africa on their work in convening thought leaders, today and subsequent webinars in the packaging, plastics, food, labeling industry in West Africa, and of course for their continued partnership with PwC. Today we have a group of seasoned panelists who, pretty much represent major stakeholders across the value chain of the packaging industry. And in no particular order, I'd like to introduce Mr. Aruna Oshiokamele. Mr. Aruna is the Managing Director of Tetra Pak West Africa. Tetra Pak is a leading food processing and packaging solutions company. Mr. Aruna, we're pleased to have you today. You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
We also have Thank you. We also have Mr. Nassos Sidirofagis. Mr. Nassos is the Deputy Managing Director for Tempo Paper, Pulp and Packaging Limited. They are leading producers of BOPP and CPP films for lamination, labeling, packaging, textile and adhesive application in Africa. Mr. Nassos, you're welcome and we're pleased to have you today with us.
Thank you very much.
And last but by no means least, we have Dr. Sakirdeen Ajani. Dr. Ajani serves as the National President for the Institute of Packaging of Nigeria and also as the Deputy Director and Head, Packaging Technology Division for the Federal Institute of Industrial Research. Dr. Ajani, you're welcome. We're pleased to have you today.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here.
Thank you. And also to mention that if you'd like to read the full profile of the panelists, it's available for your information on ProPack West Africa. And also as mentioned by George, this session will be recorded, so you can refer to it at a later time. And we'd also like to make this very interactive. So please ask your questions in the chat box in the right-hand corner. and we'll try to answer as many questions as possible as we get to the Q&A session. Thank you. So, to the business of today. The truth is that COVID-19 has radically changed our world. It's really impacted on the way we live and the way our livelihoods are being conducted. And of course, the packaging industry, like several other industries, has not been spared from this pandemic. And so in the face of this, we're starting to respond to the new normal. So there are three areas that come to mind. If you think about the consumer packaged good companies that relied on materials, raw materials and ingredients from some of the harder hit parts of the world, what we're starting to see is that they're beginning to realize the need to embed supply chain resilience in the production of their packaging products. Of course, another area when you think about COVID-19 that comes to mind is the health and safety, particularly around the packaging foods company and the way all of these goods are handled. And of course, around the world, maybe not so much in Africa, but for the rest of the world, what we're starting to see is that physical stores, retail stores are being closed. And so it means that there's been a boom in e-commerce, which is great. But it also means that this translates to packages and the production being needed more and more across the world. So all of this and more we're starting to see that the key players in the industry are rising to the occasion to think of what the new normal and the way forward would be. So my question to all of the panelists today would be, how would you say the COVID-19 pandemic has affected the packaging industry in West Africa? And what would you say that the new normal for the packaging industry, compared to when you look at it compared to pre-COVID-19 days, and what we're seeing now, how would you say the new normal will look like, particularly for the short term, medium term, and the long term? So we'll start with Mr. Aruna, and then Mr. Nassos, and then Dr. Ajani can answer the question in that order. Thank you.
Right, thank you so much, Susan. Great question, I must say. And it's the new normal is the new term everybody is using these days. I like to call it Life 2.0.
Yeah.
And you did start with a good point that it's changed the way people shop or people buy things. And when I mean people, it's the consumers. So when we're looking at what is shaping the packaging industry now, we need to look at who is shaping it, and it's the consumers. It's you and I, and the rest of when we talk of West Africa, maybe 450 million plus people. And when you look at it now, what is changing is where the people purchase. So there is a lot of e-commerce, like you said earlier. There's also a lot of focus now on health and safety, on health awareness of people. People are trying to look at what they eat and the kind of things they eat, and then also people are looking at the quantity they buy. And this is driven by not just budget constraints, but the fact that people want to, when they go out at all, they want to make less frequent visits, to avoid physical contact. And then also there is interest now coming into, the sustainability, and people are becoming more aware of, how is my activities affecting the planet, affecting the environment. So we see all this in the behaviors of the consumers. And so when you have these changes happening, of course, the packaging industry has to react, or rather respond to these changes. So if I just wrap up, I see those four, what I call it, lifestyle changes that will begin to affect the way packaging industries operate in the short, medium, and long-term future. And I'm sure we'll discuss more of that as we go on.
Thank you, Mr. Aruna. Very insightful. Mr. Nassos?
Yeah, I would say that it had a major impact in our consumers' disposable income, because, and I think this is happening all over the world, because people are losing their jobs, and basically they don't have the same income that they used to have. And also impacted the raw material. We had a major disruption with a petrochemical company that we source our raw materials. So this is very important to our industry. And lastly, we see that at least in Nigeria, we have an increase on inflation, which probably will stay because of the Forex. So basically, the COVID-19 affected in many ways, not only the consumers, but also the country and their finances, and also the supply of raw material.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nassos. Well, I mean, what would you say, the new normal, will look like for the packaging industry when you look at what pre-COVID conditions and what we're seeing now?
I would say that we have to now work with scenarios. The best case scenario is to have let's say, a solution for the COVID before the end of the year. And then the climate will change. I'm talking about the financial climate and the demand, which personally, I don't see this is going to happen. So the second scenario is first quarter of 2021, which I think the economy and the issue will start normalize. But strangely, we don't see any, let's say, decrease of demand in retail products. The only thing that we see is the change of pattern of the consumers on their buying behavior. So basically, we are working now with 2 or 3 scenarios to understand what's going to happen, because so far nobody knows.
Of course. Thank you so much, Mr. Nassos. Dr. Ajani, we'd like to hear your perspective.
Suzanne, Nassos, and Aruna. Aruna, I quite appreciate our inputs, and I'm so passionate about this question. I'm a researcher, and at the same time, the national president of the Institute of Packaging of Nigeria. I will look at these effects from 2 perspectives: the way it affects the industries, the way it affects every other person on the street. The concept of COVID itself has a lot of people need to be educated. What COVID is all about. I will be speaking from the perspective of a man on the street in Mushi, or probably that guy in Ajani, not necessarily those in Victoria Island or the so-called highbrows area, who look at it from different perspectives, right? Some don't even, from that end, some don't even believe it exists. So we need to have such background at the back so that we know what we're actually treating. Now, back to the packaging industry. As a researcher, I'll start from there. I head the packaging division of the Federal Institute of Industrial Research. It has affected me seriously. There was a new machine on. It's more of a packaging machine. Basically, it's a form fill seal. Let me use that word. It's more for form fill seal. It came in December last year, and unfortunately, that was pre-COVID. Up till now, it has not been installed because those that are to do the installation were locked down somewhere in Europe. Up till now, it has not been installed, and these are meant for MSMEs who cannot afford to package their products. Now, that's one. That's you can look at the multiplier effect on the MSMEs, because this is micro, small, and medium packaging center. That's what we have in mind to put in place. So when you look at the economics and some other parts attached to it, now on the West Africa, looking at it from our own perspectives here, you see that the effect stems from the fact that we need to know that COVID is real, and two, that the effects now differs from individual to individual, even in industries, it differs from one end to the other. Before we now look at probably the effect on the economy and even politically. So on our own part here, Federal Institute of Industrial Research is located somewhere in Oshodi. I have very good interaction with those people at the grassroots. So their thinking has changed to some extent, but to a very large extent, some of them still don't appreciate what COVID. You can we even tell you that probably does not exist, even in some industries, the MSMEs. So that may be a topic for another day. But the most important thing is just that, like Aruna put it, I call it a new world order, whereby we just have to make sure we adjust to the current trends and how things are done. So it's something which has come, at least for now, and we have to live by it, and we make sure that necessary things that need to be done by the various stakeholders, we must have to make sure that we put all our hands on deck to make sure that we live by the current realities. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, all our panelists. I think, starting with the point you mentioned, Dr. Ajani, the awareness of COVID is, what I like to call is that people are sort of COVID fatigue, the awareness was there, but it's sort of starting to drop. So you have two spectrums of the conversation, people who don't believe that it exists, and then people who know that it exists, but are sort of starting to get weary of the protocols. And there are lots of multiplier effects across all parts of the industry and also the world at large. Also, one of the things that I think Dr. Aruna touched on is the increase in demand and the quantities that people are buying now in the onset of COVID. I remember earlier on in the lockdown, there was a lot of panic buying. I don't think that has particularly reduced, but it just means that we're consuming more. And so because of this consumption, what we're saying is that the world is confronted with a waste problem that has been worsened by COVID-19. Think about the many takeaway packs, and also even masks and gloves and all the other protective items that are being used and disposed. It gives us a sheer indication of the amount of waste that is being generated. So I'll ask for Mr. Aruna and Mr. Nassos, what I'll ask is what innovations and options are being explored to ensure that this new behavioral pattern does not generate a new wave of waste that will threaten environmental sustainability in the long term and the near future too.
Okay, I can start. I think the issue of waste to start with is we are very passionate about that at Tetra Pak, because sustainability, leading the sustainability agenda in our industry is one of our core pillars for our 2030 strategy. So it's very passionate for us. And you also agree with me that when it comes to this issue, waste and sustainability, it really depends on the maturity level of the regions where we are in. So when you look at the West African region, we also are not at the maturity level, as you were saying, in the Western world, but we're beginning to, get a grasp of it. And the way we approach it here is not just, how do you reduce it? It's great to reduce, but first is really how do you manage it? Because waste will be generated. You can't do without generating waste. So it's how do you manage it? And for you to manage it, you first have to know what it is, So that's why we believe educating people, about waste, educating them on what you can do with it. You can reuse, you can recycle, it is renewable. So we started by last year. We had like a sensitization seminar for over 10,000 kids in Lagos area, just to explain to them, what you can do with waste from used beverage cartons. That's what we call used paper packages, and it was such a huge success for us because not many of them knew about it. So we have to start from there. Let's educate the people on it. Then you now move into the rest of the value chain, then, which we are also doing. We are looking into our production processes. How do you save water? How do you save electricity? How do you make sure you are moving to low carbon circularity economy? So there are many of these things that are ongoing at the same time at different levels. But the first thing really is, let's get the education right. Let people, especially the children now, let them understand what is waste, what can you do about it, and how can you make it better. Okay.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. Awareness is very important, because what you don't know. Yes. So please go ahead, Mr. Nassos.
Yeah, sorry, I have an echo in the sound. Is there any way?
Should I repeat the question? Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, Dr. Ajani, you can go ahead while we sort out Mr. Nassos.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Now,
oh, sorry, hold on, Dr. Ajani. I think Mr. Nassos, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, please go ahead, Mr. Nassos, and then we'll take Dr. Ajani right after.
Right. Okay. Let's say the near-term solution does not lie with the consumers, because the consumer behavior and the way they treat the waste is more or less will not change for the near future. It will improve, but it will not change. So I believe that the, let's say, solution lies first with technology. So in Europe and the US, they try to develop plastics that they are biodegradable, and probably we will see new technologies. For the time being, the trend, I believe, is, and the emphasis is on, let's say, eliminating multiple laminations of different substances, like different films. I think this is going to be the first stage before we improve on the technology. Nevertheless, in Nigeria and I think in Africa, we should improve on the system of let's say, recycling, which will take a while. And they already started in the grammar school and high school, but there is a long way to achieve a solution on improvement on the recycling of materials. But the main thing is the technology. Unless we have a technology that can resolve the problem of the plastics and the substrates, in the near future, I don't think it's going to be any major improvement. But what we're going to see is some regulations, sometimes unfair regulations, on eliminating various plastic films or materials.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Nassos. This leads to my next question for Dr. Ajani. And in terms of waste generation, I mean, this might sound like a bit of a funny question, but really, who should be held responsible? Do we talk about the consumers or the producers? And then from the regulator's point of view, what can be put in place to ensure that, whilst we work on the technology, on our packaging, in terms of waste collection and all the other elements that drive that sort of behavior we want to see, what sort of regulations should we expect to see from your end? So my question again is, who should be held responsible for the waste generation? Should it come from the producers, i.e. the value chain, the packaging industry, or should it be the behavior of the consumers in the way that they sort of dispose of their waste?
Thank you very much for that question. I hope you can hear me right.
Yes.
Suzanne, that's a very good question. Everybody is to be blamed when it comes to everybody, both consumers, the producers, and every other person you can think of, especially in this part of the world. Like Aruna put it the other time, we are talking of education. We are talking of sensitization. The issue of waste in Nigeria especially, it's something which we all need to put, all hands must be on deck. From the producers as well, they'll be thinking of profit, which is the primary aim of coming up all the multinationals, Tetra Paks and the likes, and some other outfits like that. But an area where I think you are talking of regulation, but an area where we need to lay more emphasis has to do with research and development on how to take care of all these materials. Unfortunately, what is gaining ground now are mostly the hydrocarbon-based packaging material, which are very, very recalcitrant in terms of degradation. And this is what most of our people are using now. Most industries, Tetra Pak with your 6-layer, I'm sure, whatever percentage you have there, some percentage will definitely go to the non-biodegradable hand. And the biodegradable component there, you see form very less percentage. So we need to lay more emphasis on research and development, whereby we should be thinking of composite materials which will be easily biodegradable. Like Suzanne mentioned too, which is a very good question. Most of the nose mask, most of the materials we use today for as nose mask, some use Ankara to some extent, at least. Cotton is to some extent biodegradable. But majority of the materials you are using are non, that's just on that part. But on packages generally, one of the major problems facing the world all over today has to do with the packaging materials we are using. And in as much as whatever regulation, like you have said to, there are regulations in place actually, but regulations probably from the likes of SON or the likes of NAFDAC, those are the regulatory bodies. They've actually not been able to come up with making it compulsory for the packaging industry to use particular materials, because probably at the end of the day, let's think of how we make do with what we have. So like someone said, we should be able to make sure that the issue of recycling, the issue of attitude, and every other thing that needs to be taken care of in terms of making sure that packaging materials are sorted as at when due, such that one we know where, what, and whichever material we go, be it glasses, be it metal, be it plastics of various grades. But unfortunately, the plastics are winning. They are actually winning. The hydrocarbons of the polypropylene of this world, the PETs of this world, polyethylene terephthalate, these are basically, they are strictly non-biodegradable. Non-biodegradable. And it's one of the major problems we're having, not just in Nigeria now. If you are talking of flood, you are talking of some other environmental problem. If you are talking of climate change, you'll be talking of these packaging materials. And until we all come together, the government policies, the industries, the whatever body, when we do what is expected of us in terms of research and development to come up with biodegradable materials, which probably may not be 100%, it will definitely come in composite, right? We are not saying we are going to phase out hydrocarbons completely. So it actually calls for concern, more importantly from our giant packaging industry. And at the research end too, we are putting a lot of thinking up, right? Which I'm sure other parts of the world are not left out too, right? The use of polylactic acid from biomass like cassava peel which was used some parts of the world, and we are even trying some here to the scales of fishes in coming up with require some pellets. It will be used in conjunction with those hydrocarbons to come up with a biodegradable material at the end of the day. But all these are the conceptual stage. Some failed, while some most researchers in the world are trying to put on what they think is best to do. So, and we need to put the industry at heart too. Like I said earlier on, we would not like them to run out of business. But the area of recycling, which I think is carrying the day, whereby there's not going to be any end, we are not going to have any waste. All those materials, if well sorted out, we can get the best out of them, more of a wealth to wealth, waste to wealth system. So I think we all need to think twice on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ajani. It's interesting that you mentioned the biodegradable materials, but what comes to mind is the availability and the cost, and that is, that comes with sourcing some of these raw materials. So, I mean, of course, one of the impacts of the pandemic on the industry, revolves around supply chain disruptions. A lot of companies are now having to explore, alternative sources of products and raw materials as they attempt to build their supply chain resilience, like I mentioned at the start of this conversation. So again, looking at the packaging industry, I mean, we're starting to think, what options can be explored for local, manufacturing and the use of innovative local packaging. So maybe Mr. Nassos, you can give us some view on that. How do you think, in terms of options that are available for the Nigerian packaging industry, what options are available for us to explore local manufacturing and the use of innovative local packaging?
First of all, let me make a short comment on the biodegradable material, because a lot of people say it could be the solution. The biodegradable material usually are manufactured from organic, like potatoes and some other corn. And I think this is going to create a bigger problem than the problem that we currently have. So for the near future, personally, I don't think that the biodegradable material will give the solution. Nevertheless, in small quantities, it can work in some cases. But what we are trying to do in our industry is basically educate our customers and our customers, their customers, to reduce the weight of the films and make a smart packaging decisions. So our aim is the reduction of the amount of packaging on the product. That's why we are investing in machinery and technology, which makes a great reduction in the thickness of the product, of our products. And we go into a very, very low microns, like 12, 10 microns. So this is the only contribution we can do for the time being. And as I said, reducing the weight of packaging is a solution.
Hello, Mr. Nassos. Okay. Hello, Mr. Nassos.
Yes.
Okay. I think we lost you for a moment. Okay.
Did you hear what I said? Was it?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I did. Thank you. So, I mean, just to touch very quickly on hygiene, because of course, when you talk about COVID-19, there's a heightened sense of, cleanliness and hygiene, which comes with the spread of the virus. And so, again, the packaging industry, something that maybe packaging materials are highly likely to spread the virus, when things are moved from place to place. So, Mr. Aruna, let me ask, what health and safety measures would you sort of leverage to minimize these risks and of spread of the virus? And are these measures likely to crystallize into the long-term health and safety gains for the packaging industry, in your view?
Okay, thanks. Very great question on looking at it from a health point of view. I'm not sure, if there is clear research or data to say, the form of packaging today increases or reduces the rate of transmission. I don't know, but I'm not sure there's anyone like that. But having said that, I think, when you look at what the packaging industry can do today and how they can support, one quick thing that comes to mind is the size. So first you have to look at, what is the we've talked of the consumer consumption pattern. We've looked at, okay, what kind of creating, what kind of package size do you provide? And more these days, people prefer to have, single serving when it's possible, because then you have less people coming in contact with it. Or in the case of families, everybody wants to have, one call it a family pack, where myself and the rest of my family can share, so we don't have to get in contact with too many people in the supermarket or when I go to the shelf. So one way we can look at it in the industry is, we begin to look at the size of our packages, both, the unit size and even the cartons that we provide. So once we look at that, then it's easy, for people to be able to go into the stores and pick, whatever products they want, knowing that, okay, chances are that, you have less contact with people. But in addition to that, when it comes to food safety, aseptic technology is one of the best you can think of, because it keeps your food fresher for a longer period of time. And in this situation where we are in, where people are still not very comfortable to go out and get and interact with people as they used to be, having your products in aseptic packages actually helps with safety, because then you don't have to make frequent visits or frequent stops to the grocery, or even if you do online shopping. So I think those are a few of the things that you can look at that directly impacts health and safety of the consumers when you look at the packaging industry.
Okay, very, very valid points. Thank you so much, Mr. Aruna. I also wanted to really look very quickly. If we look at the value chain, okay, part of what will help to scale up the business, of course, is the digitization of the packaging industry. And so, the expectation is that on the back of the pandemic, there will be an increased digitalization of the value chain through, automation and, what we hope will be a more widely spread use of, artificial intelligence, not just for cost efficiency and productivity, but also to help to make supply more resilient and transparent through real-time tracking. So if we bring it home to West Africa and, Nigeria, again, this goes out to panelists. For your industry in Tetra Pak, and obviously for you, Mr. Nassos, in terms of technology and technology know-how, how ready would you say Nigeria and West Africa is ready for this digitalization of the value chain in terms of automation? So maybe Mr. Nassos, you can start first, and then we'll have Mr. Aruna respond.
Okay. I would say this was the major learning from this corona virus issue for all of us in the companies that we operate in Nigeria. And actually, I can speak for my company. We realized that the way forward is basically through automation and innovation. And this is basically our strategy now. And we are making now major investments in automation. Now, of course, we start thinking ways of tracing our products from the production to the trucks to the customers. And I guess many other companies are trying to join into this effort. I would say now, after the corona virus issue, most of the companies, at least in our segment, will have to do improvements and automate as well. And in Nigeria, I believe we are in a good shape in terms of technology. Our machinery here in Nigeria are, I would say, second to none. We have very modern technology. We have companies that can support tracking systems, and the only obstacle is the decision to go ahead with automation and tracing of the products throughout the chain. Now, we realize that this will make big savings and big reduction in cost. Companies that will succeed on the automation will be the most cost-effective in the near future.
Okay, thank you.
I would like.
Yes, if you can quickly weigh on it, Dr. Ajani. Yes, please.
Yes, actually, I had for Aruna and Nassos in the area of let's say probably research on how to make packaging materials more hygienic. There are various efforts going on, and that's why I still have to repeat myself. We need to lay emphasis more on research and development. I know of some outfits coming up with what we call Corona Mix. The virus is actually not, virus can't live on its own. Virus live on other living forms like bacteria. And what virus does is to redirect all the mechanism in any other known living forms, which are basically bacteria. So people are working on antibacterial, antifungal packaging materials, which we need to look at. Tetra Pak needs to look at that. Though he has talked about at the retail end, whereby you use for once and go. We need to look at sustainability in that area too, because that's why we have some of these small packs of whatever everywhere now, simply because we've not been thinking of how to handle them. So, and the area of automation too. Automation, fine, it's okay. It reduces machine-man interaction, whereby your product from the beginning to the end, you have it probably intact or sterile. But at the end of the day, we need to put at the back of our mind that some of those materials we have to, good for the pets. Some of them, in as much as they are not moist, with a very low moisture content, that will not give room much for bacterial growth. And if that doesn't give room for bacterial or fungal growth, then the likelihood of attack by virus would be next to nil, probably minimal. So these are some of the things we need to look at in our processes. And the Institute of Packaging of Nigeria is trying its best possible to bring about awareness in some of these processes. Like Nassos says, that's a way out too, and using the right packaging material with the required compatibility with our food product. So I think that's the little I need to add. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We will now move very quickly into our Q&A session, where we have quite a few questions from our audience, and we'll take as many as possible. Mr. Aruna, this is a question for you. So one of our audience members is asking, how is the packaging industry and companies like Tetra Pak leading the conversation on plastic and waste reduction in this new normal world where consumers are more concerned about their health and wellness?
Okay, great. Thanks for that. First, we are one of the companies that is part of the Food and Beverage Recycling Alliance of Nigeria, FBRA. And this is a body of companies in Nigeria that are focused on how to improve recycling in Nigeria. And it's not just plastic, it's all form of packaging. And if you recollect, I did say earlier that as a company, one of our pillars is really driving the sustainability agenda. So for us, if I just zero in on what Tetra Pak is doing, I did mention already last year we did some sensitization programs with secondary school children. Last year also we partnered with a producer here to recycle, some of our used beverage cartons into tissue papers. In my office now, every tissue paper you have there is made from recycled used beverage carton. And we are at an advanced discussion with another manufacturer in Lagos to utilize used beverage cartons in production of some of their products. So we are engaged in this, and this is at the same time, we continue to discuss and find ways together with other companies in FBRA to see how we can improve the recycling rate. Like Mr. Nassos said, that is one thing we can improve here in Nigeria, aside from, educating people. So quite a number of efforts is going on, and COVID has just reiterated the need for it. We started before COVID, and we will continue to work on that. I hope that answers the question.
I believe it does. Thank you, Mr. Aruna. Mr. Nassos, it's a question for you. Do you think that there are some benefits that COVID has brought to the future of the industry, which we can internalize for the future in the world? And what is Temple Paper, Pulp and Packaging Limited doing in this regard?
Well, the COVID situation, it was like a wake-up call for many industries, including ours. And basically we realized, and I think many other companies realized, that while this is happening, they have to discover the best possible ways to do their business and organize. What I see now, 6-7 months after living with COVID-19, I think our customers and ourselves improve very much in terms of planning, logistics, and basically everyone now is spending time to organize better as a company. Before it was basically the growth the profit was the most important thing without thinking about your company. In the last 6-7 months, I see in our company and in my also customers, we all try to organize much better. The second thing is that we realized that the internet, it's very important in our business, more important that we used to think a year ago. Also our ERP systems. We understand how important it is to have a good ERP system. So all these elements is let's say the positive outcome of COVID-19 to the industry. And I believe that it will help very much all of us to improve, because now we understand how a real crisis is and be prepared for the next one.
Hopefully there won't be a next one.
I think there's going to be a geopolitical crisis myself.
Oh, wow. We hope not. I don't think the world is ready for anything else.
That's what I think.
We don't pray for our next one. That's it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'll just read some comments. From what I'm seeing in the chat box from the audience. Someone's written here: we need to do more to have more sustainable industries with the use of more single-use packs. There are more holistic approach with the law backing it. We agree. Someone's also saying to Dr. Ajani, thanking you for the insights for SMEs, and is asking for your details on how you can support SMEs. Maybe the organizers will make that available in the end. Cool. It's a very interesting question, Dr. Ajani. I'd like to sort of ask. Someone's asking, can the Nigerian government stop black nylon, those nylon bags to save the environment? I mean, how do you, it's something that is very common when you go to purchase, your local grocery store, it's easily available. So the question is, what can the government do to save the environment? Can they stop that produce and, probably, produce something that is a bit more recyclable and more useful and environmentally friendly? Dr. Ajani?
That's a very good question. That's a very good question. In some countries, Rwanda, yes, to be precise, they hardly use something like that. We actually call them polypropylene. Mm-hmm. But we need to understand our system. Like I told you, I'm in Oshodi. I'm very close to the grassroots. Why I will support that to some extent is that crime mostly is perpetrated with black nylons. Because if I carry anything, you may not see it, you wouldn't know what you have there. But on the part of the government, based on the question which you have asked, it will be a very tall order because you put many people out of business. Mm. And all we have to do is, on the part of the government, we can de-ink. There can be policies on de-inking whereby it should not necessarily be black, it should be transparent. But attitude needs to come into place as well. If they are properly treated in terms of well sorted out, I think we have a way out. The one reason why I don't want to sound too hard on all this polypropylene or all these hydrocarbon generally, I was in a program, I was in one seminar where we are talking of total ban. So someone had to stand up and said, we have invested a lot on recycling of some of these things. That's another opportunity for some people, right? If you ask the government to ban this now, how do you want us to go about it? And we've invested hundreds of millions of naira on recycling. So I think it boils down to the fact that if it has come to stay, then let's know how we live by it. I may not even support the fact that government should place an outright ban, but we need to put up the right attitude and we contain this. And I'll still come back to my research and development. If we come up with materials which are composite that get this thing biodegradable over time, I think the ecosystem we also have a sigh of relief. So we have to think of both ends. So I think on our own part as a research institute and as the national president of the Institute of Packaging of Nigeria, we're trying a lot and we are going to come up with a lot of sensitization to general members of the public, which we've done some in the past in the area of plastic migration into food substances. So how you handle plastics at a particular temperature so that it will not impact negatively on your food. Everybody is putting up his best, but coming up with a policy, one needs to think of both hands so that we are all going to do it good.
Awesome.
It's all going to be a win-win.
Thank you, Dr. Ajani. Thank you, Dr. Ajani. Thank you so much. It's very interesting that someone has talked about draws our attention to other African countries, and this sort of piggybacks on the back of what you talked about when you mentioned Rwanda. Saying that countries like Rwanda, Kenya, Tanzania and even South Africa are somewhat ahead of Nigeria on plastics and waste reduction.
Sorry, they even do pay. They even do pay polluter principle. You pay in the situation whereby it is. You pay for it. You pay heavily for it. Sorry for the interruption.
Not a problem at all. So it'll be interesting to see what the government has in mind in terms of, either implementing a plastic ban or implementing taxes and fines for, for individuals and for, corporates that sort of, default on some of these things. Just as we quickly start to wrap up, I'd like to ask, some final questions. For Dr. Aruna and for Mr. Aruna, I've just upgraded you, Mr. Aruna and Mr.
No problem. We're giving Aruna and Nassos PhD.
Let me ask you.
I'm giving you PhD. Dr. Aruna, even Dr. Suzanne.
You never can say. Just one last final question. What does Tetra Pak West Africa and Tempo Paper Pulp and Packaging Industry, Tempo Paper Pulp and Packaging Limited hope to achieve over the next few years with regards to the future of the packaging industry? Where do you see some of the risks and opportunity, and how do you think your companies are positioned to react to these? So just some final thoughts on that. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for that question. I think for us, we look at our customers and the consumers alike, and we say, how can we bring value to them? And we don't, we look at value holistically. So in this part of the world, cost is a very huge part of what people look at. And it's not a bad thing, actually. But more importantly, the way we see our contribution is, how do we optimize our customers' operations today? How do we make sure they spend less to produce more? How do we ensure, their equipment are running optimally? They spend less on spares. And then also, how do we innovate together? How do we capture these new opportunities that are coming with this COVID situation? The consumer patterns is changing. There are a lot of, previously, the old family used to go shopping, or maybe the mom and two of the children. What we see now is that during this COVID period, there was a lot of shopping made by the father, because he's telling every other person, sit at home, I will go do this.
Very good.
How do we take advantage of that going forward? Because that may not change, even if we get the vaccine for COVID. Sustainability. How do we begin to make sure, people understand waste, that we manage waste? We're not necessarily looking out to eliminate it because it's possible, but how do we manage it together? And so those are Tetra Pak's interests in this region. And we are partnering with our customers. We have other people that, we are doing and researching with, and we believe we will get there. So it's really bright and promising, if I must say.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mr. Aruna. That's so encouraging for us to hear. Mr. Nassos, any words from you?
Yeah, for Tempo, we are very clear about the future, and our objective is to invest in very high-tech and very modern films production in Nigeria. So we work very closely with the OEMs and to understand the new developments, always focusing on environmental friendly films, but also films that can be also used for better marketing for the end consumer. I could explain this a little bit more maybe in another session, yes. But we are very much focused on technology. And this is how we're going to go to the future. Every new technology that comes that has to do with the new films friendly to the environment, size reduction, better protection of the product. That's where we will invest, and we are actually investing now.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Nassos. And any quick final word, Dr. Ajani, just in a few seconds, just to wrap up this conversation. Any final thoughts as we wrap up?
Thank you very much. Thank you. Final word from me, from the World Packaging Organization, that packaging has to sell your product, not just protect it. So the average consumer spend just 2.6 seconds making a decision whether to pick up a product or not. And packaging affects 75% of the decision of the consumer. If that's the case, our packaging industry can't afford not to be innovative. And I'm seeing packaging as a way of dealing with the present pandemic and even probably any future one that may probably come up. With packaging, I'm sure we have a lot to do to contribute to human existence. And it's a way all parties involved must definitely come together and resolve this issue. In packaging, we have a lot to offer the world. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Ajani. Thank you so much, Mr. Aruna and Mr. Nassos. If I was to summarize, this conversation has been very insightful. I think that there are, pretty much 5 sorts of mega trends, we expect to evolve as we sort of, grapple with the effects of COVID-19. And it will be around sustainability requirements, as we sort of go along the value chain. Of course, looking at the widespread of e-commerce and how we sort of adapt the industry to ensure that our packaging are friendly towards the e-commerce and moving away from traditional brick and mortar. And of course, we have to take into consideration the rapidly changing consumer preferences and the highlight and the sort of emphasis on hygiene and changing customers' tastes and preferences, which would then lead us to the digitalization of packaging and the innovation that comes with the industry. We've come to what has been a very insightful session. To ProPack West Africa, thank you so much for championing this conversation and for bringing together, brilliant minds. Thank you to my distinguished panelists. It has been an absolute pleasure. And we also encourage you to keep checking the ProPack website for subsequent webinars, which will last through to the end of September. Thank you. Over to you, George.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Susan. Well, I thought that was a really interesting and informative session for me, getting a kind of first-hand expert insight, as we've had this morning. It's so useful in gaining a better insight into the impact of the new normal on the packaging industry in Nigeria. And of course, thank you to all of our speakers, to Aruna representing Tetra Pak, Nassos for Tempo Group, and Dr. Ajani for representing the IOPN. Thank you for all of you that listened in. I hope you found it as useful as I did. For all of you that are listening and you'd like to listen back, the webinar along with the other webinar from 2 weeks ago will be live on our website. Will be on our website to watch again. And this is again in addition to the other webinars that we've already gone through. Our next webinar is being held in 2 weeks on the 30th of September, and it will be covering the opportunities for a circular economy post-COVID-19. We really hope to have you all back then. Lastly, just like to remind you all that ProPack West Africa 2021 will be back bigger and better next year, exactly a year, this week on the 14th and the 16th of September. Whilst it is still a while off, our teams in Lagos and in London are taking bookings already for next year. And if your company is interested in exhibiting, please do get in touch directly with one of our teams or through our website, which is www.propackwestafrica.com. So until our next webinar in 2 weeks' time, thank you again. Thank you to all of our speakers and Suzanne, our moderator, and we look forward to connecting on the 30th. Thank you all and have a great day. Thanks.
Thank you.
Very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.